Uh, my name is Pablo de Jesus. I'm the Executive Director of the Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice, and I'm very pleased to have you all here with us this evening. We've got an interesting evening planned for you. Great comments and some great programming and features. So I just want to remind everyone to please mind your own microphones. We don't have the webinar feature, so you gotta, mind your mic. Also be aware that if you're on camera, it's sometimes disorienting to folks if you're moving about. So please, if you decide to move about and take care of your body, um, that you go off video. Um, I'm going to ask you to please be kind to our guests and our hosts, and do the typical UU Zoom roll call thing. Put into the chat your name, your congregation, your state, a land acknowledgement, preferred pronouns. Let our guests, the Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis, and those of us within UUSJ who are hosting you, know who you are and where you're from. I'm going to ask you to also remember to be kind with each other, treat each other with the same kindness that you would want someone else to treat you with. Let's try not to be snippy. Let's try to use I statements over you statements and we statements over they statements. I need to be clear about this this evening. This session is going to be recorded, but it is closed and off the record to the press. So please, if you're a member of the press, understand that you are here in your personal character, not in a professional character. If you want to reach out to UUSJ or the Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis for comments, go to our web pages and find out how to do that. In addition, nowadays it's important to mention that we don't permit independent audio video recording, copying of the slides, or any AI note taking. We don't do that. We don't consent for that in this event. We're withholding our agreement for those things. So there's that. And then finally, please respect our C3 status. We are a political organization and we engage politically in the policy framework and process, but we are nonpartisan. So try to keep that in mind. We're about issues and we're motivated by the idea that multiple forms of oppression are intertwined and that people must work together to end them. So we champion our UU values of love, interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity. And we hope that you will join us in doing that this evening. So we invite you to attend this evening's session in that spirit. Please look for chat links in the chat. We're going to be dropping various things throughout the entire session, signups and other opportunities. And while you're doing those, I'll ask you to please donate. This is a fundraiser, and we want to fund the work that we know is ahead of us. So tonight's agenda includes a 90-minute session. For those of you who are familiar with UUSJ, you'll know that we're going to do a certain amount of housekeeping, then some grounding. We're going to have a word from our development chair. Then we're going to have what you're all here for, the comments by Reverend Liz Theoharis, some Q&A, and then we're going to move into what we at UUSJ call our soft close. You're free to bounce if you have to go take care of younglings or have dinner plans. But for those of you who want to engage in some joint processing and discussion, we're going to have some breakout rooms, and then we're going to close with our usual warm and lingering goodbyes. So with that in mind, it's now my pleasure to introduce the Reverend Latifa Griffin. Paulette, can you add Reverend Latifa to the spotlight for everyone?
All right. Good evening, folks. Can you see me?
No.
All right. No, I'm not spotlighted yet.
You are.
There we go. Great.
Okay.
I can see myself.
Great.
All right. Again, good evening. My name is Latifa Griffin. I serve as the minister at First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Palm Beaches. I'm finishing up my third year there, also a UUSJ Board of Trustee. Very excited to do this opening this evening. Let us take a moment to just ground ourselves in silent contemplation before we begin. Thank you. Please join me in our chalice lighting. Spirit of life, God of many names, and holy mystery beyond all naming, ground us in courage when the world feels unstable. Steady us when fear tempts us towards silence or isolation. Remind us that freedom has always required people willing to come together, to organize, to protect one another, and to keep showing up with love. We light this chalice in a time that asks more of us than thoughts, prayers, and good intentions. Freedom does not sustain itself. Justice does not organize itself. Beloved community is built when ordinary people choose courage, connection, and collective action. Friends, may this flame remind us that freedom demands not only hope, but our full participation. Amen.
You so much, Reverend Latifa. Um, so it's my pleasure now to introduce um, it's my pleasure now to welcome Kim Rebecca Murray of Parker, Colorado, another deeply cherished UUSJ trustee. Kim's going to give us a word about developing our capacity to do more at UUSJ. Uh, Kim was raised in Chicago and graduated from the University of Illinois. She has a master's from Miami University of Ohio. She has served in the Peace Corps in Honduras and has been an active social justice, actively engaged in social justice since the age of 9. Kim has taught composition and ESL and literature at inner city colleges in Louisiana and Chicago, and as an adjunct professor, and much, much more. And if you want to know a lot about that, Kim is always down to talk about those experiences. Um, Kim was raised Jewish, but has been a Unitarian Universalist for over 30 years. She and her husband, an art activist, attend Prairie Unitarian Universalist Church in Parker, Colorado, where they enjoy their surroundings, a zoo of pets, and visits from their children and grandchildren. And I think it's important to add here for folks in the call. Please know that Kim is one of our internal USJ champions for both racial and economic justice. We have a wonderful bunch of board members in recent years, but Kim is one of those thought leaders who helps me keep us moving forward in the ways that we want to be evolving. So with that, I give you Kim.
Okay, thank you, Pablo. I feel embarrassed. I'm also old school. I have notes written down about what I want to say. I used to, if I had a double screen, I'd have notes up. So if my eyes wander, I apologize. Um, so I wanted to thank everybody for being here today, and especially thank Reverend Liz for effectively contributing her time and her scholarship and her moral clarity to us. It's something that we need right now. And I did want to just comment about where we are right now. I had jotted here, let me take a minute to talk about where we are right now. And it would not take a minute, right? We don't have enough time to talk about what's going on right now. But we, in my opinion, have been through a profound regression, particularly with the recent Supreme Court decisions have rolled back longstanding protections in areas that directly affect poor and low income communities, voting access, obviously, workers' rights, and the authority of federal agents to quote unquote safeguard the public. These changes and shifts in our environment do not fall evenly. They really fall hardest on those who are already carrying the heavy burden. So at the same time, too, we have an affordability crisis that continues to squeeze families across the country. I'm very excited to have a moral leader such as Reverend Liz with us. I feel like her work emphasizes that movements succeed when they combine.
You want to try to go down or you want to hang out up here?
And somebody needs to mute themselves.
I'll take a turkey sandwich then.
The turkey sandwich person, please mute yourself. And so what was I saying? I was saying that, Reverend Liz, I believe that you promote combining truth-telling and organizing and a refusal to leave anybody behind, regardless of economic status. And that's what we're trying to do in the federal arena, is bring moral clarity to economic justice debates that too often ignore the lived experience of poor and low-income people. And disproportionately affects people of color as well. So what we're trying to do is, through our economic justice work, we were trying to mobilize UU voices on wages, housing, hunger, healthcare access, and the democratic process. And we also would like to try to equip congregations with briefings and conversation guides and moral grounding. And we'd like to show up in Washington as much as possible to make sure that the dignity of every person is centered. And we also like to partner with other movements to amplify the voices of those who are most impacted by these decisions that are made in DC. And so at this time, with federal institutions rolling back our rights, we have to be the ones who are going to move forward with moral courage. And so the UUSJ is small, but we are mighty. And we're effective because of people like you who choose to resource our work. So tonight, I'm inviting you to become a monthly sustaining donor. If you see the QR code up on your screen, you can use that, and that will take you to our page that will explain next steps. We encourage you to make a special gift to help strengthen our economic justice pillar. Or we encourage you, and this is very important, to bring your congregation into partnership with us. And your support really helps ensure that when decisions are made in Washington, that the decisions that shape who gets to eat, who gets to vote, who gets to work safely, who has a home, that our UU values are present in the room. So with that, Reverend Liz often says, I think that movements grow when people stop sort of analyzing the problem and start actually resourcing the solution. So our view as UUSJ is part of that solution, and you can be as well. So thank you for your generosity and your courage and your wherewithal, frankly, your commitment to building a nation where economic justice is not just a dream, but it's a shared reality for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. So now it's my pleasure to introduce the Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis. But I just want to draw your attention to something that flashed across your screen. UUSJ and the Cairo Center are partners in a launching initiative called the Covenant for Our Future, because we know our two organizations cross paths, but we know that so much of undoing the root harms for our society and for people is about long haul work, not loophole work. And with that in mind, we're collaborating with a bunch of other organizations, Green Faith included, Hindus for I'm dropping their name. Hindus for Human Rights. There you go. And a bunch of others to try and do the awareness building and power building necessary to then be in position to hold newly elected members of Congress accountable for undoing the harms of HR 1 OBBA, what is commonly referred to as Reconciliation 1.0. So as Congress begins to think about Reconciliation 2.0 and 3.0, it's really important that we develop awareness of how we're going to have to carry this work forward. And it's probably going to be more than the next session of Congress, perhaps even more than one or two sessions of Congress. But if we want to undo those harms, then we've got to make everyone a moral and values voter for progressive, inclusionary policies. So with that in mind, we've brought to you tonight one of the nation's best public faith-based public actors, a wonderful and supremely capable organizer, theologian, author, mobilizer, advocate. I mean, she does it all. She's one of those people that when I think of who I want to be when I grow up, I think of Reverend Liz Theoharis. She is the visionary and founding executive director of the Kairos Center. She's also the co-leader of the Poor People's Campaign and National Call for Moral Revival. She has so many accolades. We had to send them to you in email just to make sure that you got to see them all. She has plenty of books out. Please, we're going to drop some links and I encourage you to go buy those books, read them, study them. You know, I like to treat her material like a course, a Bible study course, and really take it seriously and work through it. So with that, I'm just going to hand the mic over to the wonderful and amazing Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis.
Well, thank you so much, Pablo. And it's really good to be with everybody here. I'm not sure that Pablo would do this, but it's his birthday today. So if people could put some beautiful birthday greetings, what better way to celebrate the justice seeking and loving leader of this work, but to be here together. So no one wants me to lead singing, so I'm not going to have us sing right now, but please put those wishes in the chat. Uh, but yeah, it's great. It's great to be with everyone this evening, and I really appreciate the invitation. I thank you, Pablo, and the whole team at UUSJ, the whole UUA. And I actually been spending the past few days. I'm in Washington, D.C. right now for a kind of meeting and an action around ending family and child detention and separation. And there's been this amazing crew of Unitarian Universalists from different parts of the country, from California and Texas and New Jersey and here in DC. And so a shout out to Leslie and to Aaron and to Robin and to Michelle and to a bunch of all of our colleagues who are doing some amazing holy organizing in this moment. So we titled this evening's program, Freedom Demands That We Organize. Freedom demands that we organize. And I kind of imagine I'm not alone, that when I hear the words freedom demands, I at least think of Ella's song from Sweet Honey in the Rock. It's a song that's based on the words of Ella Josephine Baker. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. And I feel like it's the slogan of the UUSJ, right? We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. And I I just I have that ringing through my here, like we woke up this morning with our mindset on freedom, oh, freedom over me, just thinking about the long history and the current reality of us out in communities, out in the streets, trying to let freedom ring. And for us to really take seriously this idea that freedom demands. And then when I hear the words that we organize, I am thinking about, we just passed May Day. I think about that amazing labor anthem to the tune of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, Solidarity Forever. And I think about the words of someone like General Gordon Baker, who was a political mentor of mine from Detroit, Michigan, who was a labor leader and a civil rights leader, and who said that, when we hear that song, Solidarity Forever, it's not solidarity for, this shift or for 8 hours, it's not solidarity for a year. It's really again, we who believe in freedom cannot rest, and solidarity forever. And so I just want us to think about this charge that freedom demands that we organize. And I just think this is so true, especially in this moment. I just said I've been in this meeting for the last couple of days. I'm thinking about what it's going to take for us to build up a campaign to end permanently child and family detention. Because you know what? There are 6,200 kids in child and family immigrant detention right now, in this country, right? I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of people being detained and deported and denied any of their rights. We're living in a country, the richest country in human history. And there are somewhere between 180 and 200 million people who are in poverty, near poverty, living in some kind of, precarity. And we all know here that gas prices and food prices and fuel prices, I mean, airline prices and all prices just continue to rise and rise and rise. And we're living in a moment when there's this illegal and unjust war that's, literally sucking billions away, from life-saving food and healthcare. You probably heard on April 1st, Donald Trump say that because we're at war, we can't afford childcare and education. And, he didn't mean it as a joke. It was on April 1st, but it was no joke. He was deadly serious. Um, and so when I think about this kind of charge that freedom demands that we organize, I also then kind of want to subtitle this program as, we only get what we're organized to take. Um, if you read that bio that folks sent out, one of the books, that I wrote and I came out with last year is titled that. And you only get what you're organized to take is a slogan that actually comes from the National Union of the Homeless, which was the largest organizing drive of unhoused people in the 1980s and the 1990s. It's the network, the movement that won the right to vote for unhoused people. It's the movement, it's the network that won, all kinds of programs of social uplift, directed at unhoused families and communities. And this slogan, "You only get what you're organized to take," is just a personal favorite, slogan of mine, because I just think it expresses a core argument of the work that I do, the work that many of us on this Zoom do. Um, and I think it kind of expresses this argument of kind of the theory of change, um, of really building, a movement for social justice. Implied in this statement is the idea that poverty and detention and racism and sexism and all forms of injustice in this country and world, they're not going to end because of just the goodwill of those who hold political power and wealth. They're not going to end through the charitable actions of well-meaning and sympathetic people alone. That a change of the scale that we need in this country and that we need in this world, it requires a protagonist, with a more pressing and compelling agenda. Injustice of all forms will end when people refuse to allow it to exist. When we and all of our allies refuse to allow society to be complacent about death and suffering caused by social and political and economic deprivation. Poverty and injustice will end when people who are impacted by those, become a united and organized force. They build a movement that is open to absolutely everybody, everybody in, nobody out, and build that not just for one action or one campaign or one political moment or one election, but through a long-term human rights movement that can rally a critical mass of society to our cause and reorder the political and economic priorities of our nation. I think this idea is both simple and explosive. I want to think a little bit about part of the reason that that covenant for the future that Pablo was talking about has come to be. That big, beautiful bill, that, big bad bill that was passed last summer is really a grotesque nightmare for tens of millions of people. Legislative cuts, including historic attacks on Medicaid and SNAP, not to mention all of the other kind of policy changes. They're coming at a time when 60% of Americans already are saying they can't make ends meet. The majority of people in this country. And as justification, we're hearing about work requirements and discrediting the poor, even at the same time as folks with political power and wealth in this moment are funneling billions of dollars into the war economy and to lavish the wealthy with tax cuts. What we're seeing right now, the militarization of our communities and deployment of National Guard and ICE and Border Patrol onto our streets, funding, wars that are causing chaos all over the world. This is all interconnected. And because it didn't just get here overnight, it's going to take a long-term movement of people to turn the tide on it. And so we have this covenant for the future. We have this campaign that's about both repealing that big bad bill and then investing in the kinds of things that are going to make life better for everyone. Now, I have been doing grassroots anti-poverty, pro-justice, anti-racist, pro-feminist organizing for more than 30 years of my life. And as a longtime organizer, one of my favorite slogans has always been, they say cut back, we say fight back. I think it's actually a kind of catchy turn of phrase, but I think it also reveals that for too long, we have been, as a people who are committed to justice, we who believe in freedom, that we've been for too long on the back foot. In a rich nation like ourselves, mass poverty exists next to unprecedented plenty. And so we have to be tired of just fending off the worst attacks. Too much ground is lost when our biggest wins are simply not losing some of the past gains. And I'm thinking about something like the VRA and the last couple of weeks, the decline in our democracy. How can it be that we're just fighting to not even stand still, but just to fend off the worst? Amid that cruelty, amid that avarice, we have to fight for a new social contract. One that lifts from the bottom, as we often say, so that everybody rises. Lifts from the bottom so that everybody rises. Now, I can't say, and I know you all already know this, that there are shortcuts to building the kind of popular power necessary for us to shift from the defense to the offense. That task is a generational one. And it requires even greater discipline and sacrifice and perseverance and patience. But I want to tell a couple of stories from the work that I come from that I think offers some clues into like what it's going to look like and how are we going to be able to build this kind of long-term movement. As nation fascism continues to metastasize, largely untold stories of people that have been impacted by poverty and injustice contain, I believe, some of the very solutions that we need to prevent this democratic decline and to overcome bigotry and political violence, Christian nationalism, and economic miseration. Today, the historical demands of those who are hurt first and worst by injustice, those demands for safety and belonging, for peace, for equality, for justice, for absolutely everybody, they're rapidly becoming the demands of all of humanity. And the hard-fought wisdom of people fighting on the front lines has a lot to teach us all. I'm reminded of the welfare rights movement of the 1960s and the 1970s, especially the National Welfare Rights Organization. This movement has been largely forgotten to history, but it was one of the biggest poor people's organizations in the country. It was actually one of the biggest mass organizations and networks of movements of people, of membership, of the entire civil rights and Black Power movements. Um, it was an organization that was led by poor Black women who regularly staged mass marches and demonstrations and held picket lines and sit-ins at welfare offices, right at a time when poor people, again, were being subjected to racist and exclusionary and moralizing policies. At its height, it had more than 100 local chapters, a sophisticated operation that offered a political and a spiritual home to 20,000 to 30,000 dues-paying members. I don't know how many folks here have heard of them, but in 1971 in Nevada, where the governor was cutting the social safety net, the local National Welfare Rights Organization chapter organized 1,000 women to storm Caesar's Palace. It was a luxury hotel and a casino, and they shut down the main drag in all of Las Vegas. That protest turned into a multi-year campaign of civil disobedience. A federal judge eventually reinstated the kind of benefits of welfare moms then. And the women there were unapologetically militant, willing to take big risks. They were also clear that forging power required the less visible kind of spade work, as Ella Baker used to call it, of movement building, including looking after one another through networks of solidarity and collective care. At the same time as the Black Panthers were feeding tens of thousands of kids through the free breakfast program and provocatively asking why the government couldn't do the same, even as it spent billions of dollars slaughtering the poor of Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, the National Welfare Rights Organization created its own innovative projects of survival. And a historian of this, someone who's a colleague of mine, writes about these moms in Las Vegas that these welfare moms applied for and won federal grants to open and run the first healthcare clinic in a largely Black and thoroughly poor west side of Las Vegas. Then they came to the neighborhood's first library and public swimming pool and senior citizen housing project, solarization program, crime prevention program, community newspaper, all organized and staffed by poor moms and later their young adult children. The reason I kind of raise this example is I think sometimes we can look back to what our communities have been able to do when we organize permanently, not just for a moment. Um, and 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 the kind of life and needs that we're able to build. And so, I think about this kind of organizing, and especially one of the leaders of the National Welfare Rights Organization. Her name was Johnny Tillman, and she was the first chair of the National Welfare Rights Organization and later became its executive director. And she made all of these connections and talked about this kind of organizing being a matter of survival. So folks like myself who were trained by the welfare rights movement, trained by the homeless union movement, trained by low-wage workers organizing for freedom, trained by the immigrant rights movement, we have been able to kind of take some of the lessons, some of the model of this organizing, and call some suggestions for what we need to do today. In our work, we actually talk about this kind of survival organizing as the Johnny Tillman model, right? Actually, naming some of these leaders that have been forgotten to history, but who actually paved whole new ground for folks. Um, and in that model, poor women, poor people are uh, not simply an oppressed kind of group of people, but a latent social force with potentially vast and deep power. Because folks who have the least invested in the status quo and the most to gain from big change, uh, there's something about hitching our wagons to folks that all they can do, as Howard Thurman talks about in kind of his theologies of liberation, is to push. And I think in this moment to then harness some of this transformational power, um, I want to talk about four principles of organizing that I think are as relevant today as they were back when Johnny Tillman was leading the work in the 60s and 70s. She suggested that people have to unite across our differences and that actually people that are most impacted have to assume strong leadership in these movements. Um, on the one hand, I think this is not a controversial idea to a group of, for instance, of the UUSJ. Um, but somehow in our society, we often look to everyone other than those that are most impacted to actually help to lead. And we assume that the kind of divisions of geography and race and gender and sexuality are so vast, are so great that how are we ever going to unite? But what history shows and what the organizing that we're doing now tells is that when we come together across these lines of division, when we create space for those that are most impacted to lead, then we are able to actually build strong movements, strong coalitions, strong campaigns, and get the job done. I think about someone like Frederick Douglass who says, "Those in pain know when their pain is relieved. Those who would be free must strike the first blow." So there's that first kind of principle. The second is that actually the work of justice and our movements that we're building have to operate as kind of politically and financially independent forces in our public life. Therein lies the fact that we're here for a fundraiser. We need the resources to be able to do the work that we're called to do in this moment. And that can't just be dependent on other institutions. That we have to fund the work that we're trying to do in the world. And that is possible. And that is good. Um, and thank goodness that is where we're coming from. Then the third principle is that as we're doing this bigger work of trying to transform systems and structures, we also have to attend to the daily needs, the spiritual needs, the material needs, the aspirations of everyone around us. I think sometimes in this work, we say, do we have to do protest and direct action and militancy and organizing, or do we have to, pray with people and care for people and accompany people and feed people? And answer is yes. We have to do it all. And we can and we are. And I think in our work, when we do that, when we do the advocacy and the organizing, and we also do the meeting of our needs, then we can be holistic. And it matters and it works. But then we have to realize that meeting people's needs or advocating for one policy is just the step along the way to building something bigger. Because it's going to take something big and beautiful to overcome all of the darkness that is around us. And so, to me, those guiding principles really kind of help measure my steps today. And so as these attacks on everything from Medicaid to SNAP, as more and more violence is unleashed in our streets, both in these detention centers, but also these secret sites of incarceration, abduction, we're not seeing people just silently and passively swallow suffering. in states as from Vermont to Alaska to Michigan to North Carolina, I think we're really seeing this upsurge of resistance. In Texas and California and Minnesota, we're seeing thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, faith and community leaders take to the public square and say, faith over fear, and families are sacred, and it's okay to change your mind, right? But I think we all here know that we can't be satisfied simply with the righteous kind of acts of protest and mass mobilization. We have to transform kind of the growing indignation that people are really expressing and feeling all over the country into lasting and visionary power. And I really believe that the Johnny Tillman model and those kind of 4 principles are a good place to start. So this is the moment we're living in, right? This season right now, it's a holy one. I mean, spring into summer is when, life overcomes death. It's when righteousness overtakes, unrighteousness. And we have billions of people around the globe, engaging in different rituals of remembrance and repentance and deliverance and liberation. And so we have to bring and we have to build campaigns and movements for belonging and connection and a covenant for the future, like Pablo was talking about at the beginning. And I think this is an all call moment. And so, in the face of that, I know that the UUSJ is going to be, already has been, and will continue to be right at the heart of that kind of organizing. And so, in the work that we do, we often will talk about, everybody in and nobody out. And I wanted to actually see if I could just share a very short little video. It's of some of the music that leaders that are connected to this work. They're calling themselves Songs in the Key of Resistance. And some folks actually from the UUs, have been joining us in some of this singing. But I wanted to kind of share this song. It's called We Are the Movement. And I'm going to find, oh, here we go. I'm going to find it. And oh, you know what? I have to unfind it because I think I forgot to share my sound, and nobody wants that. All right. And then, all right, let's see. Sorry about that, but all right. Now, here we're going to do this because I hope it feels inspiring to you.
We are the movement, liberation moving for every single human. We have come to win. That's why we sing. We are the movement, liberation moving for every single human. We have come to win. For all our kids, we are the movement, liberation moving for every single human. We have come to win. It's time to heal. We are the
I hope that that makes you feel um, that we can do this. We are doing this, and we have definitely come to win. So thanks so much. It's a joy to be here with you, and I'll pass it back to Pablo.
Thank you so much, Reverend Liz. So I'm gonna invite some folks to think about, questions, but because we're recording this, we're gonna privilege people who are brave and bold and raise their electronic hand and ask their question shortly, succinctly. Um, but I just want to ask you one question that is routinely asked of me in my capacity as the executive director of UUSJ, which is how do you counsel, how do you pastor folks around around the issues of maintaining and sustaining the joy for the work through the trials and tribulations? So I know we've been in rallies and witnessed things together. We've been on in advocacy stuff. So I think part of the answer is music, but I'm wondering, beyond the music, what do you want folks to bear in mind as we enter into this period where we're going to have to mount a pro-democracy movement that is strong, inclusive, grounded in spiritual discipline, and knows how to sustain itself over time?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. So my first day of seminary was September 11th, 2001, and I was in New York City in James Cone's systematic theology class. And the Twin Towers actually fell while I was in that class. And I got to think a lot about both trials and tribulations, but also this question of faith. And I realized that many of my classmates had a faith that good things were going to happen to them because good things had happened to them up until this point. I realized the people that sent me to seminary, the folks that I had been doing organizing with from the welfare rights movement and the homeless union, and the some of the stories I was sharing already, that hundreds of millions of impacted folks and really had a faith, not that good things would keep on happening, but that even though only bad things had really ever happened, something else was possible. And I think that actually is with me every day. And I invite it to everyone here that like, what is it to not have hope despite hard times, but hope in hard times? What is it to have faith, not that things will get better, but it doesn't have to be this way? And what is it for us to kind of care for the world as we kind of care for ourselves? Not that we have to remove ourselves to find, I mean, we should find moments of joy any place we can. But that, that we can also find that joy actually in the struggle that death and violence and authoritarianism don't have the last word. Um, uh, you know, last week I was with 200 song leaders, because you're right, song is a huge part of it. We were outside of a ICE check-in center in Texas, um, and folks were just singing, like a version of this indigenous kind of saying that they tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. And to me, it's all of those things. I mean, it's also for me, I have two teenagers. I'm really bad at playing video games with them, but I play them a lot, right? It's like there's also this place of finding joy in, in all the things that you can. But But I find a lot of joy. I find a lot of hope. I find a lot of faith, actually, again, not just in winning or just good things, but in the affirmation that it can be better, in the kind of commitment that it's our responsibility to make it so. But as we do it, we don't have make that commitment out of like a drudgery and like a sadness and a misery. It's like out of like the possibility that look how amazing it is when we're out here alongside people that are like us and nothing like us, raising some holy uprising. So I don't know. In my mind, it kind of goes back to James Cone's systematic theology class for me.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, I appreciate that answer. And I just want to underscore for our UU folks, so much of what Reverend Liz is saying here sort of ties to the way that we as Unitarian Universalists talk about keeping our eye on the flourishing that is possible. You
Mhm.
know, for every, I think it's as uh, Reverend John Cresswell teaches, for every contraction, there is an expansion. For every darkening, there is an eventual dawn. For every uh, withering, there is an eventual flourishing, and that's something that's a concept,
Mm.
that's a framework that we've certainly use in at UUSJ in our work with the UU Climate Justice Coalition and with the UU Solidarity Initiative doing immigration work, but in many other places. So I appreciate that. Now I see that we found some folks who are brave and want to ask some questions. So I'm gonna recognize Kim and then John.
Thank you, Pablo. As Pablo mentioned in my introducing me, I was in the Peace Corps in Honduras, and that was I came from a very insulated white suburb of Chicago, and then to be plopped down in the middle of Tegucigalpa really opened my eyes to what poverty is. And so when I came back to the United States, I uh, saw it in my own backyard. I lived in Chicago and I lived in this nice neighborhood, but I began to explore other neighborhoods and I saw. And I think, there are opportunities for other countries to illuminate uh, our challenges, but at the same time, I'm wondering if there are solutions or successful um, movements in countries dealing with intense poverty that maybe we could look to for guidance.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for thanks for the service that you've done for that question. Because I think there's a lot to learn from places. I know for my own self, many different places have been great sites of learning. One of them is Brazil, a country that has overcome um, authoritarianism, a country that has had like very deep and widespread poverty, and also a country that a landless workers movement has been able to organize in every single state across the nation, um, across language, across culture, across race, uh, helping millions of some of the poorest people in that society build up kind of cooperative farms and communities. And I think there's actually a lot to learn from that. I've learned a ton from the shack dwellers movement in South Africa. They're called the Abahali Basemba. It's like the people of the shacks, um, who in kind of post-apartheid South Africa have had to continue to challenge the administration for both political repression and just deep and wide impoverishment, but who have, been able um, to build. And one of the things that's amazing about this movement um, is like if someone just comes to the movement and says, I want to join, they're told, well, go and organize 50 of your neighbors and friends and family members and then you can come back to us. And so I think of that as like kind of a model for some of the work we do. Is like, okay, what would it look like for everyone that kind of comes if we go and find 50 more and then pull them into the work with us. But they've been able also to just actually improve the lives and livelihoods of they're the largest kind of social movement of unhoused people on the whole continent of Africa, and it's amazing. They've won, they've pressed the government on the fact that actually there's a constitutional right to housing in post-apartheid South Africa that hadn't been being realized, and they were able to kind of take the government to court and win. And so I think there are these like amazing examples, both of the kind of meeting people's needs, like I was talking about before, and the kind of advocating for larger systemic change. And I think, different movements across the world. I mean, there's many other examples, but I bring those two just because they've been particularly inspiring to me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to recognize John, and then if we have a minute, then we'll go to Aaron, but I think we're running up on our time limit. So I want to respect your gift of time and attention. John, please ask your question quickly.
One of the things that always bothered me, given, we have to convince people why to vote and why their vote is important. And a lot of the things we take for granted in this country, like safe food, safe drugs, things like that. 150 years ago, food was adulterated on a regular basis. The clean water, clean air, all those things were moral
Yeah.
judgments or things that were done for the right reasons, but they were moral. Voting, giving people representation, all that's moral. And when we try to get the vote out and convince people that they have to vote and turn out, people will be asking, why should I do it? And I think we've done a pretty bad job of communicating that because we have so many good things or so many things they just take for granted like they've always been there. And so my question is, who is looking, if I was to promote, which I'll be doing, I'd love to have a good tagline or a good concept behind it, such as, who's looking out for you? Because we need people, you look at all these corporations who are basically getting their way, and who's going to stand up to them? And we have to have people in DC and the states and in our city councils and county commissioners that look out for us.
John,
And how would you build upon that in a moral sense?
Yeah, I really appreciate this point. I mean, a lot of the organizing work I do is about the fact that, um, the it's kind of like we talk about waking the sleeping giant of kind of poor and low income voters and just many people in our society who don't hear their kind of name or condition in any of the kind of elections and um candidate forums and all of this kind of stuff and who just do not believe that they can make a difference and that we can make a difference. And what we have seen is that when politicians and candidates actually talk about the issues that matter the most, when it's very clear that the issues that people, not just the like real solutions are on the ballot, people show up in record numbers. And so I think it's a combination of applying the pressure on candidates and on politicians to actually take up the issues of people's like lives. I mean, uh, you know, I think it's pretty clear right now to many people that the vast majority of people in this country are not happy with how things are going. Um, uh, and actually, believe that we should have better investments in things like food protection and immunizations, not to mention SNAP and healthcare, not to mention the things that really provide for security, which are not, weaponizing our police forces and our border patrol and ICE agents. Um, those are very unpopular positions, but part of the trick is folks feeling like they can have an impact, and that that they have there are options, that there are folks that are going to be out there fighting with them and for them. And so I think as we approach, what is going to be a very consequential election. The more that something like the Covenant for the Future that Pablo talked about, that UASJ and Cairo Center and a bunch of other groups are throwing down around, of let's get rid of the bad and let's put in some good. And let's have these issues that really matter in the lives and livelihoods of people, be at the center of our political public discourse, and as moral issues as you're talking about, because these are the real moral issues of our day. I mean, and people of faith are responding. I mean, I just have to say, maybe this is like my closing. I have been doing grassroots justice organizing for decades of my life, really in some ways my whole life, but my whole adult life, which is more than 30 years. And I regularly get to be in communities across the country. I mean, in just the last month, I've been in Texas and Oklahoma and Illinois and Maryland and North Carolina and, a lot of places. And in places that folks call red and places that folks call blue and places that folks call purple and everything in between. Um, and what I have seen is an upsurge in organizing that I have never seen in my life. What I am seeing right now is that people are ready for a change, and we have to help, midwife that and build the kind of vehicles, the kind of campaigns, the kind of advocacy work, the kind of spaces and places of spiritual and political belonging that folks can actually express that will and have it become, policy and realized and like an actual way of people recognizing how their lives can be. And so I think as we think about these elections, the more that we're able to, frame this as moral issues, people know they are. I mean, that's why over, you know, over Advent and Christmas, folks were holding those Mary Magnificat, like, quotes at protests. And that's why, on Good Friday, folks were doing Stations of the Cross at detention centers and homeless, shelters. And that's why, and Pentecost, folks are going to be, holding up and organizing, all kinds of prayer vigils. It's like people realize that these are the moral issues of our day. Um, uh, and we have to be out there in the public square. And so, anyways, I feel hopeful amid all of the hardship. And I feel like it's good to be here in the numbers with you all, because we got to march in for some justice and freedom right now.
Absolutely. And I thank you. I feel like you're one of the great teachers about how, a phrase that some of my elders used when I was young. We have to learn how to dance between the raindrops
Mm,
and take joy in that. So
I love
thank
that.
you so much, Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis. We appreciate you. We appreciate the attention that you gave us this evening. And we want to say thank you. We want to shower you in love. We want to bid you adieu and allow you to go have dinner and, take care of those teens, or, do whatever you got to do with the people that you're in community and relationship with. We appreciate you. For those of you who want